war's really just a different brand of war, like it doesn't cater to rich and a fan of...
All right, guys, welcome to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm your host, Charlie McGrath. It is Halloween, the 31st day of October, the last day of the month, Wednesday, and we have a great program lined up for you tonight. Now, for those of you who were reading the schedule in chat, you know, we had Larkin Rose scheduled, and you know, we haven't been able to contact him. Now, he is out there on the East Coast, and we really don't know if he was affected by the storm. I'm assuming he must have been, because you know, he's been on the program before, and certainly he had scheduled to be on for 2 hours tonight. So hopefully Larkin is doing well, and if we can get a hold of him during the next 2 hours, we'll bring him on via phone. And we've been checking all day to make sure, you know, that he's not popped up on Skype, and we haven't seen him. So we have to assume he's having some kind of connection issue. And if we can't get him tonight, we'll get him back on another night. But we do have good news for you. Mark Passio is joining us again on Wide Awake News Radio, and it's been a little bit since he's been on. He was scheduled to come on. I believe we had you coming on the 21st of November, but I'm excited to get you back on because it's an interesting. You always bring a lot of interesting topics and a lot of good information to the program. So we're going to kick it off with Mark here in just a minute. Now, those of you watching on Justin TV, you heard Mark and I talking about the hype that's going out about Hurricane Sandy, Category 1 hurricane. And yes, if you turn on your television, you're going to see, I don't even want to say devastating. It isn't like you're looking at the Fukushima tsunami, I mean, where you had vast areas just completely underwater and wiped out. But you're seeing some damage, no doubt about it. Sand erosion and beaches moving, that kind of thing, especially in New Jersey area. But man, oh man, does it seem like they are hyping this thing to the moon. And I want to kick off on that topic because I was thinking today of all the different aspects that. First of all, when we had Dex on last night, he gave us a lot of good information on weather modification, and hopefully you guys had a chance to go check out some of his source material at paulscan.blogspot.com and see some of that stuff. I did, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. Now, weather modification isn't anything new to as far as the topic goes on this program. We've talked about it multiple times, and to pretend that it doesn't exist is truly to be putting your head in the sand. But if we look at some of the things that are generated out of this event, I mean, the timing, this late hurricane season, late in the hurricane season, the timing of it a week before the presidential election, and then the area that it decimates, or alleged to decimate, the area that it affected. And there's no doubt there's millions of people that have been affected by it without power and whatnot. But it's being used now. It could be used, I guess, in many, many different ways. And Mark, let's talk about this for a few minutes. We've got you for 2 hours, so let's get into this a little bit. I mean, what is your take? I mean, neither one of us are meteorologists. Neither one of us, I mean, maybe you were a meteorologist at one point in your life, but I certainly am not. But it seems really bizarre. The storm itself seems bizarre, but we don't have to go down that path if you don't want to. But however, what it's being done with it as far as hype and potential scenarios that could come out of how they played the media aspect or the propaganda aspect of this storm is pretty fascinating.
Well, Charlie, first let me say thanks so much for having me back on your show. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I would agree with you that it's largely a fear injection that is being put out into the public, and it's done for dual reasons. One, it's to, again, keep people in that lower state of consciousness of fear. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to be coming off as totally downplaying any of the lives that this storm did affect, because in some of the coastal regions that hit hardest, there were areas that were sustained heavy damage and possible injuries, and people who definitely have gone through some loss. So it's not to say that no one was affected by such a storm, but the magnitude that they're hyping this, and the magnitude that, I mean, you might think it was the end of the world approaching with the way that the media was covering this event. And I generally don't even feed into that or pay attention to any of it. I may, catch a glimpse that is in someone's home when I enter it. I don't have television service in my home because I don't subject myself to that level of mind control and conditioning. But the little bit that I did see, again, the hype was unimaginable for Category 1 and hurricane, and one that barely achieved Category 1 status from tropical storm status. You know, we were like, this storm really went just over the edge of being an official hurricane of Category 1 status. Now, if you're seeing Category 3, 4 storms up to a Category 5 like Katrina was, then, okay, there is cause for alarm, and you do not want to mess around with staying in an area that's going to be in the path of a storm that is of that magnitude, like we saw with Katrina. That is something you don't even think about, and you get out of Dodge, basically, because that is absolutely an incredible force of nature that you're going to be subject to if you decide to stay in its path. With this storm, I think it was all about keeping people in fear, driving more sales of, whatever staple food items people may have wanted to stock up on, or other, survival gear. And secondarily, or even some might say primarily, is it's all about trying to keep the idea in mind that you need the government, that the government is the savior. It has things in control. It is who you can look to for information and for support in the time of some sort of a natural disaster type crisis or a natural weather event crisis. And it's all to just keep that dependency level as high as they can keep it through the fear. The only way that can be done is through people being in fear, not just proper information or readiness, but again, overhyping the information to create an injection of fear into the public consciousness.
Absolutely, 1,000% agree with you on that. In fact, I heard today a snippet of Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz out of Florida alluding to the grandiose nature of the federal government and the steps it's taking to come in and save the day. And in fact, she was just, vomiting exactly what you're talking about, how we need the federal government. We need them to come in and rescue the situation, save the day. And we're so lucky to have Obama out there with his massive ability to be a leader in situations like this. And of course, she's gloating for President Obama because she wants him to be reelected. But painting this picture that, the people on the ground in New Jersey and New York and in Pennsylvania, wherever, can't take care of themselves. They need the government to step in there and do that. And then she ended that interview with at least a 5-minute diatribe about the necessity of FEMA and the involvement of FEMA. Right. It was just driving home. FEMA will come in and save the day. These cities, these counties, these municipalities, they don't have the resources to clean up and to rebuild their community. So thank goodness we have programs like FEMA or agencies like FEMA that will come in and redistribute the money. I mean, it's go ahead.
You see this hierarchical reinforcement up through the line, all the way up to the federal level. I saw, just as you saw, this being done at the national or federal level with FEMA and the president. I saw a clip of the governor of New Jersey talking about how he thought it was a horrible job that was done by the mayor of Atlantic City in not being more forceful in getting people to evacuate the area. Now, a family of mine has property in Wildwood, which is an island just south of Atlantic City at the very tip of the southern coast of New Jersey. And we were getting reports from that island, and there was some significant flooding, and there was a bay overflow in from the inlets, the bay inlets over into the mainland of the island, and the sea did erode a lot of the beach. But again, they the main bulk of the houses on the island were largely unaffected, and again, they wanted everybody to evacuate and get out of that entire region. Now, yes, okay, so if they had stayed, they would have been subject to flooding. But nothing in the order that demands the type of response that these government officials are putting out there.
Absolutely agree 100%. We're going to be back with Mark Passio, more Wide Awake News Radio in just a few minutes, guys. Hang tight. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. This Halloween, the 31st of October, Wednesday, Mark Passio is our guest. If you're watching on Justin TV, you can listen to the conversation continue during the breaks. And I forgot to make that announcement at the top of the program that we are running these now live on Justin TV, as well as the Rinse Network, and a rebroadcast tomorrow on Oracle, as well as we'll put all this up. You might be watching this on YouTube later on tonight as well. And guys, I was going to start off the program with this. I really want to take a minute and thank the monitors in the chat room for being in there every single night and keeping it, family friendly. I want to thank Bonnie, who is the webmaster of wideawakenews.com, because she works that website every single day for absolutely nothing. I want to thank Karen Quintostado, because she handles now all the booking, and she does a fantastic job doing that. And I want to thank Gary Hindershot, because right now he is sitting in his home down in the South with plenty of other things he could be doing, but he's sitting there being our, I guess, what do you call it, technical. He's our technical engineer. He's allowing this program to be broadcast on Justin TV, as well as uploading it to YouTube later. So the program has really grown tremendously over the last year, and it absolutely would not happen without the monitors in the chat, without Bonnie running the website, without Karen doing the booking, without Gary doing the engineer work that he's doing, and without Eric Lovely coming on here and helping host these things a couple nights a week. And I want to thank these guys and give them that recognition, because we are spreading out. People are noticing us on more and more programs. We're being interviewed on different events, and we're starting to have more people follow the program and send it to their friends and family. And it's happening because of a dedicated group of people who are doing this, certainly not to make money, because they're not, but they're doing it because they believe in the message. So thank you very much, guys. All right, Mark, excuse me. We were talking during the break about Chris Christie blaming the mayor of Atlantic City for the strand. And you brought up some good points about what's stranded. And I mean, it seems that anything that happens on a local level is considered to be almost, something that is to be shunned, ridiculed, and we're children. We're not allowed to take care of ourselves or think for ourselves.
Exactly. And he made the statement that he ordered the people out of that area, as if he could do such a thing and just give commands that have to be followed by the public, as if he's not a servant, as if he's an authority who can make orders on people to actually leave where they live. That's their decision to make, because their lives belong to them. They don't belong to the governor of the state of New Jersey. That's right. So it was all about reinforcing the notion of authority in the minds of the public, and this hierarchical centralized control that if you weren't willing to listen to the orders of the mayor, then you have to listen to the orders of the governor, or then the orders of the president. And it's all a psyop. It's all this psychological warfare operation, which is a form of mind control, to reinforce the notion that the public is children. They can't make proper decisions on their own. They can't take care of themselves. They need a savior to come and rescue them, and that's the government. They're the parent. That's the big daddy who is there to step in and take charge and come in and pose as the savior, when really they never ever do a thing, because you can't do a thing to prevent the workings of nature. All you can do is attempt to manage the aftermath of it so that it comes out in your favor, and you're looked at as needed, as necessary.
That's right. And you watch over the next 72 hours. And Mark, I'll show you. I'm sure you'll agree with this. First of all, we're going to be told we had 50 plus. We only had 50 plus fatalities in this storm, this massive storm that went across, it was the biggest storm that ever hit this country in the history of the nation. and we managed to only have 50 deaths because of Big Brother. And, and your point of that, you can't control nature. Well, you can't, but you can certainly hype a bad fall storm into this major Category 5 hurricane, at least sell the fear of a Category 5 hurricane. And then when you have the normal results of a bad winter storm, where it's going to be this large storm that's there's going to be fatalities in it, but you're setting the stage that there's going to be hundreds, if not hundreds upon hundreds or thousands of deaths. And because you had Big Brother there, you had this the overlord watching over the children, that we only had 100 or 50 deaths in this case.
It's all about worldview. If you believe that people can ultimately make decisions on their own, that they aren't mental children for their entire lives, and it's about fear. Fear is what's driving this whole thing in people's minds. The people that think that government is necessary, people who think that people have to be quote unquote taken care of or directed like a herd or a cattle or something. As long as that's the worldview that people are willing to accept, then that is going to be your reality. And you're going to lose more and more and more freedom, and you're going to go deeper and deeper into the cage, from whence there is probably not going to be any escape, and you're going to live in that cage as a slave. And that is all driven by the dynamics that exist in the mind. If you cannot accept the possibility for chaos, then you can never be free. That's all this ultimately comes down to. You have to get over the fear that there might be chaotic events that happen in your life.
That's right, and there might be things beyond your control.
Right.
But this is what you're 100% right about. Well, you know what? I'll save it till after the break. We're going to be back with Mark Passio, more Wide Awake News Radio, in just a few minutes. Hang tight.
Stay away.
But what I'll bring it up again after the break. Matter of fact, I'm going to make a note so I don't forget to. The fear, this fear of the unknown, and you want to give over to these people that you think are going to be your savior, and they're going to rescue you. They're going to protect you from any fear, this fear of the unknown. And some people call this a normalcy bias. They want everything to be normal. They want nothing to go outside of this line or this line. And as long as everything's in this cattle chute, they're fine. They're happy. But the truth be told, there is absolutely nothing that these power elite, these people that want you to bow down and worship them, there's nothing that they can do to protect you or to save you or to prevent bad things from happening.
Government has never protected anybody since the dawn of time and never will till the end of time. It's not possible. That's the whole thing. People have to accept the truth that government isn't there to protect you. That's not their job. They're there to control people, to attempt to control people and put them into alignment with the will of the powers that own government. But people insist that they have to be taken care of, that they're not on their own. See, that's the whole thing. Everybody is already on their own, and they just don't understand that or recognize it. You're on your own. Buck up, take the responsibility for your own life, and that's it. And that is seen as horrible and extreme to most people, because most people want that layer of assuredness that they're protected. And, a comet could be hurtling toward the Earth right now, and there's not a damn thing one human being on the planet would be able to do about it. That means you're not protected at any given time or place. And you have to accept that. If you want to live as a free being, you have to accept that there's always, in a physical reality, going to be the potential for bad things to happen or chaotic things to happen or things that could possibly harm or hurt you in some way. You cannot live free living in fear. It's not possible. Those two things are antithetical to each other.
That's right. And in fact, what you are afraid of cannot, like you said, cannot be prevented anyway. So,
right.
The true freedom is realizing that, just admitting that to yourself, that is your true freedom. I mean, bad things are going to happen. You can prepare as best as you can for a crisis or a disaster situation, but it's going to happen. And when it does, the same people that want you to believe that everything's under control because they're stealing your freedom and destroying what you once had as a great nation. They are not going to be able to protect you any bit better, even if they threw this nation a quadrillion dollars into debt. It's not going to happen. So that self-realization that you are on your own, you are facing any trials or tribulation yourself, is a quite freeing thing to undertake.
Absolutely. And I think what this is all really about, like I said, it's a psyop to see how much they still have the minds of people. And I would endeavor to say they have them completely, because most people just buy anything the media puts out there, and they gulp it down with a spoon and a straw, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And they're just not, they're not psychological.
All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Mark Passio is joining us. If you're watching on Justin TV, you heard us continue this conversation a little bit, and I want to touch on this a little for those not listening on Justin TV. Mark talked about when we close out that break that the government wants you to believe that everything, that if you just give over, in a way, you think of it, you give over everything, you give over all your humanity, you give over your sovereignty to these powers that be. In the guise that they're going to protect you. And the truth of the matter is, even if you sell yourself out to them, even if you give your sovereignty to them, they cannot do anything to prevent a disaster from happening. In fact, they'll probably do more harm than they will good, because they built up this anticipation of savior status. So, one thing that is really very liberating is the realization. It's kind of like waking up. You wake up and realize that I can't trust the mainstream media because they're selling me an agenda nonstop, 24/7. You wake up, and that in a way is terrifying when you wake up to that. But it's also liberating, because you know that at least the information that you're putting into your head is information that you disseminated yourself, and you used your own mind to determine what you believe was true or what you believe was false. And you're developing your own opinions. You're not having somebody place it there for you. The same can be said for realizing that all these billions and trillions of dollars that have been spent for the security industrial complex build out of the United States of America, all these drones, all these fusion centers, all these TSA Viper checkpoints, and all the erroneous legislation that has been sold to be protecting you. Once you realize that isn't the case, this stuff isn't there to protect you.
That's right.
It is there to protect the system, Mark.
That's correct. It's there to control you. That's all right. That it's about, is keeping people in an infantile state of consciousness so that they're easier to control. And this entire media hype, I think it's all a psyop to just gauge. It's a psychological experiment to just attempt to gauge, to find out how much the propaganda the public is still willing to swallow. And I would say, as I was saying during the break there, that the public is still completely on the hook as far as the mainstream media is concerned. From everything I've seen around me in this area of Philadelphia, and in any wider sense, from anybody that I've spoken to or listened to the comments of, on any kind of social media networks or the internet in general, is that the public is still completely being fed intravenously the utter nonsense propaganda that the mainstream media that is completely owned by government and corporate interests is feeding to them, is putting out there into their consciousness. And as long as that's the case, people are not going to own their own mind, because they're not thinking critically. They're accepting information instead of weighing the reality, weighing the facts that actually comprise reality. And they're not going to be able to make accurate decisions. Their decisions are always going to be guided by that force of fear that is telling them that these people are necessary and they have their best interest in mind. And ultimately, what that makes the public is completely naive people who are basically willing to be led down the primrose path and ultimately to the slaughterhouse. because that's where we're headed if we don't wake up to this, how this manipulation works. And the only way we can do that is to really understand the human psyche better, the psychological factors that they are playing off against us. They understand how the human mind, the human fears, and human motivations work far better than we do. And they're using that knowledge, and that is occult knowledge, hidden knowledge. The word occult simply means hidden from sight. And they're using that occult knowledge about how the human psyche operates to more effectively control us. And the mainstream media is one of the most effective means of doing that.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And on that topic, we have Mark for these last two segments of the first hour, and then the entire second hour. I want to make sure we devote to the Free Your Mind conference. This is what you basically hunkered down and almost been in hiding working on for quite some time. So we will definitely cover that conference. And to talk about media control, media mind control, it blows me away. I talk about this on the program all the time, that anybody in this country, and we don't have to go back to wherever, we don't have to go back to 1913, the Federal Reserve, or income tax, or 71 in the gold standard, or we don't have to go back to 9/11. We don't have to go back any farther than 2007, the end of 2007, the beginning of 2008, with the creation of the Tea Party, the beginning of the bailout phenomena, the creation of the Occupy movement, the wave election, and now 2012 going into this next general election. If you lived through this very small, wafer-thin, small sliver of history of this country, and you are still buying into the red, the blue, the battle between the two, and that your side's going to come out on top if you just get your team in there or keep your team in there, nothing illustrates your point better than the fact that most people are still bought into this system. I can't tell you how utterly, almost at this point, repulsed I get when people start talking about we just get Romney in there, he's going to turn the corner, he's going to fix things. I hear this on a daily basis at this point, and it blows my mind. It literally blows my mind that we are that controlled through media. The same exact media that's telling you, listen, this is how insidious this is. The same exact people, the same exact money, the same exact media, the same exact personalities that were telling you Barack Obama was going to save the day are now telling you Mitt Romney is going to save the day. Okay? This was, 1,200 days ago. That's all it took. 1,200 days, and they are flipped completely and put their money behind another guy, and you're supposed to believe into this. It is utterly amazing to me that we are still, as a nation, as a people, this controllable, Mark.
I totally agree. And Charlie, the only thing that I ever ask anyone who gets emotionally involved in politics, or actually even believes that politics isn't anything but a dog and pony show and a professional wrestling staged event, okay, very similar to how wrestling is a staged event of seeming opposites fighting against each other, but it's all part of an act, ultimately, so that the house gets away with the money, of all the people who go and pay attention and give their energy over to the act. I ask anybody who doesn't believe that that's all politics is. The only question I ever ask them is, how old are you? Because they are literally mental children, and it's sad. It's a sad thing,
I like that,
to see an adult that has the mindset of a child. They have the naivete of a child. And it's a very sad thing to witness someone in an adult body who is a grown child. And
no doubt. And I love that line. How old are you?
Yeah, it's part of what we need to do is grow up. We need to grow up and realize these people are liars, period, plain and simple. Very simply, they're liars, and they lie to you to get you to emotionally identify with the lie that they care about you and that they're there to protect you. If they can get you on that hook, that's all they need. They have your mind at that point. They have your trust at that point. And from that point, it makes it 100, 1,000 times easier to control you, which is all they're about in the first place.
No doubt, no doubt, and we're seeing it play out right now. Now, with about a minute left in this segment, I want to kind of finish up the talk on the storm and the how this is going to be used and manipulated. I think you were right on the money when you talked about how it desensitizes us or indoctrinates us into government's always got it under control. We warned you. We're here to take care of you. We're gonna make it all better. But I do see this being a major distraction, being used to not look at political unrest around the geopolitical unrest around the world and financial crisis in Europe. We're not paying attention to it. We're probably not going to really pay attention to the first-time unemployment numbers that come out tomorrow or the ADP report that comes out Friday. And this will take us this beautiful distraction will take us right up to Tuesday when we can pretend we're making a selection of our choice. We're going to be back with Mark Passio, more Wide Awake News Radio, in just a few minutes. Hang tight. And I'm here to tell you, I believe that Chris and the folks over at Seeds Now. Hello. Still rolling on Justin TV. And I'm coughing.
So far, no issues.
No dropped video. I didn't jump over to Wi-Fi for any goofy reason like last night.
It looks like your audio's been good. Your video's been good.
Good.
Got a good strong signal on Mark. Mark, buy a damn webcam so next time we can get some live video out of you.
I actually have one on order. I have recently moved over to a new computer and I'm using one without a webcam right now, but I have one on order. It should arrive within the week.
Well, cool beans.
So next time we get together, I'll have some video.
Next time they'll see your smiling face actually
Yes.
moving. Yeah, as far as JTV goes, I've been monitoring the JTV feed. We've got good, strong video feed. Audio sounds good. I got a quick note from Rents that our audio feed to them is okay. So it looks like 2 nights in a row, no problems, man.
Yeah, it sounds like we got knock on wood, I guess. It sounds like we have.
In my case, it'd be aluminum because that's all I got handy.
Well, I got a glass table here, so I'll knock on glass. And Mark, we're having this discussion because we just recently switched over. We added Gary as our technical expert to be able to broadcast live on Justin TV, and then also be able to have this recorded interview that we could post on YouTube later as well. But it takes somebody with his expertise to be able to capture the video feed, the audio feed, then send it to Rinse so it can go out over Skype to Rinse, and then broadcast on the Rinse network at the same time as well as JTV. So it's been trial and error. A week ago we were. What was it? Was it last Monday, Gary? It was.
I think we were crying in our beer that night. You had Demcat on.
Yeah, somebody sent me a message today saying, "Where the heck's the Demcat interview?" Because he was on that Monday, and I sent a message just saying, "Don't ask," because we didn't post it because it was hideous. It was horrible. But I think we got it figured out now. When we come back, I want to talk.
Who's playing the bongos? That's coming through.
I'm sorry, that's me. I was typing something. I'll mute up.
Go for it during the break.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. I want to talk about just for this last segment to segue from media into alternative media a little bit. And what a lot of here we go, Twitter. It's easy now. Understand the voice within. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, Mark Passio, 31st of October, Wednesday. In this final segment of hour number 1, like I said, Mark will be joining us for the entire second hour as well, and we are going to dedicate that hour to the Free Your Mind Conference. If you have questions for Mark, please call in 877-342-6673. That's a toll-free number, 877-342-6673, and we'll get you on with your questions for myself or for Mark. I want to continue in this last segment about media domination, media mind control. I think we've laid out a perfectly coherent case for the fact that if you're still buying into the system, well, guess what? You have been affected by media mind control. One thing I find to be interesting is the rise of alternative media, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, more and more people are turning to the internet to get their information or to exchange ideas and information. And I think it is absolutely a sticking point with the powers that be, a thorn in their side. This is why we see nonstop attempt to control the internet, and I believe that we will continue to see this until they are able to pass legislation that either makes it prohibitive for people like myself to come on here and do this because they want you to pay a $50,000 a year licensing fee or something along those lines, or they just have the ability to shut it down, or they pass legislation that makes the things that I talk about or Mark Passio talks about illegal, and we just end up disappear. But there is absolutely a very very much ongoing effort to capture this momentum in alternative media. We've seen it for the last 4 years in earnest. We've seen it with people like Glenn Beck, Sarah Palin, what's her name from Michelle Bachmann, who all have latched on to the Tea Party momentum and made it their very own. And this continues. In fact, I have an article pulled up here. I'm going to dump it in the chat here in just 1 second. The Tea Party gets a news site. Now they're talking about having a news station that is dedicated to Tea Party type news. And we got to remember, see, because the next thing that'll come out, let's pretend that we go through this election cycle and we're going to go down this road of extend and pretend for another couple years until maybe the next midterm election. We got to keep the fight amongst ourselves going. So we're going to have a Tea Party news network that will be internet-based. And of course, we know what has happened with the Tea Party. It has started out with people that were concerned about out-of-control government, out-of-control destruction of the Constitution, out-of-control destruction of freedom. And it has now been turned into the far right wing of the Republican Party. It is nothing more than a moniker at this point. So we have the co-opting of the Tea Party, followed by the co-opting of the Occupy movement to pigeonhole that as a leftist movement. Now we're going to have the creation of Tea Party news, and guaranteed this, mark my words, you're going to see the creation of the Occupy news or something along those lines to counterbalance each other, and it's still going to be controlled media, controlled opposition, Mark.
It's absolutely unbelievable that people are still buying into this controlled paradigm and accepting the media's hype about any of this stuff. And as you said, they can also infiltrate groups that are trying to put forward some of the truth and the right thing by infiltrating and co-opting those groups, like, as you said, what took place with the Tea Party movement. See, what the media is there for is to control perception. This is all about what people believe is possible and their perception of that which already is. If you can skew those two things, if you can skew someone's perception of that which is actually taking place around them, meaning the loss of freedoms, the further centralization of power, the monetary fraud and immorality that is taking place all around us, the moral relativism that is creeping everywhere throughout our culture and our mind state, and get people not to see that, get people to take the perception off of that by putting it on completely spurious issues that really have nothing to do with anything that is valuable or anything that really is affecting our lives, and get them to pay attention to that nonsense, then they're not going to make accurate decisions about that which is. Concordant with that, if you can get them to, if you could alter through a constant bombardment of phrases and word manipulation, if you could constantly bombard them with a false perception of the possible, of what is possible for us to do, for us to create, the way that it is possible for us to live that is completely different than the way we're currently living now, that is completely out of harmony with the laws of reality, the laws of nature. Okay? If you can skew those two things, someone's accurate ability to accurately perceive that which actually is, and you also are skewing their perception of what is possible to do and to create, you 100% own their behavior, because you own the thing that is ultimately directing their behavior, which is the human mind and the human perception, the ability to perceive reality. Once you control that, you control the totality of the being. And they do that. Here's the key to how they do that. This is an ancient cult. Let me repeat that. This is an ancient cult that is ultimately in the direction of this process, who is directing this manipulation. At the highest levels of it, it is an ancient cult. They understood thousands of years ago, not hundreds, okay, thousands of years ago, exactly how the human psyche operates. They understand that software code that is actually programmed into the human mind, okay? And ultimately, they're directing through that code. They're actually in ownership of the mind because they know how to redirect and rewrite that code. And they do this manipulation through one thing, and that is ultimately the exploitation of people's deep-seated, nested, subconscious psychological fears. Fear is the ultimate key to this whole thing. And getting out of fear ultimately leads to true freedom. Whereas staying in fear and believing their version of what is possible and what is real is ultimately going to keep us in a cage and never going to manifest true freedom. The fears that they exploit are the most ancient, nested, primal fears that have always existed within the human psyche, the deepest recesses of the psyche. And these four major fears are the fear of darkness, the fear of predation, being preyed upon by some form of a predator, the fear of the abandonment by the family, in particular the father figure of the family, okay, and ultimately the fear upon which all of these other fears are predicated and rest upon. It is the deepest nested fear that dwells within the human psyche, that humanity will never be free until it can extricate itself from the fear of this thing, and that is the fear of chaos. Unless humanity can free itself from the fear of chaos, it can never be free. The dominators, the cult that actually owns humanity right now because they own their mind, know this. And they know they're going to keep feeding to people the fear of chaos and the potential for chaos. Be afraid, be afraid. And if someone gives into their fear and is afraid and cannot get over and get past and work their way through in their own psyche the fear of chaos, they can never be truly free. They will always and forever be subject to control from without, because ultimately they're going into the R complex, the reptilian complex of the brain, in a state of fear of chaos. And from there, your actions can be controlled because you're not ultimately using the higher functions, the higher logical and reasoning thought functions and intuitive functions of the human brain, okay? And you cannot make accurate critical thinking and critical decisions from the R complex of the brain, which is where they want to hold you through the fear of chaos.
Man, I want to dig so deep into that. We have about a minute before we end this first hour, and I'm sure we will, talking about the Free Your Mind conference. You know, this and look again. I mean, we take a little tiny snapshot of very recent history, and you can see what Mark's talking about play out. You can see how it has been sold to the world that chaos is coming if we don't always inevitably give up our freedom, give up the freedom that we have, give up control of ourselves, of our person, of our sovereignty, give it up to those that have our best interest in heart, and we find out they never do, and the situation again never gets any better. We get further and further down the road of a critical mess and of a collapse crisis scenario being unfolding before us, and it's all because we're sold this fear of chaos. Well, we're going to get chaos. This is coming because this is what they've proven to use as a tool to gain this power and control. Use a crisis. Use a fear of the crisis when it works and it's handy to get legislation and other things passed through by the people as for their own good. But when you really want to make ultimate changes in societal structure, then unleash a little bit of chaos, unleash a little bit of that which they want to sell you the fear of, which is chaos, which is it could be chaos just in the form of a reduction in the standard of living, or it could be literal depression level chaos, so that you are willing to step back and say, oh my God, I can't take this anymore. I can't go any further into a depression type scenario. So I will give up all freedom and all control of myself to these people. Yeah.
And that is exactly how a sorcerer creates change. One who understands deeply how the human psyche functions and how the majority of people are still in this level of the ability to be manipulated through their fear. They are capitalizing on the chaotic event, which you always know is ultimately going to happen in some form or another that cannot be prevented, and they position themselves to capitalize on that and come out in the controlling position.
Oh man, this is going to be a good second hour. We're going to break all this down and talk about the Free Your Mind Conference with Mark Passio. Guys, we're going to take a break here, about 8 minutes long. Hang tight. We're going to be back and cover the Free Your Mind Conference. We'll see you in just a few minutes. All right, guys, welcome back to W.A.N.Radio Radio. I'm your host, Charlie McGrath. Mark Passio continues with us on hour number 2. If you like that new intro music, I'll drop the link in during the program. I found that guy on YouTube, and he's well. I'll get into that later. I want to get into what I want to talk about, which is the Free Your Mind Conference. If you're listening and not in the chat room, get into the chat. If you're watching on Justin TV and not in the chat, jump in there, because I'm going to pull questions out of there for Mark. And also, if you want to call in and ask a question, 877-342-6673. I'm going to give you a couple websites right now that Mark runs, whatonearthishappening.com, as well as freeyourmindconference.com. How did I screw that up? Is that right?
That's it, freeyourmindconference.com.
Okay. I wanted to put a 2 on it because it comes up as my tab is 2. freeyourmindconference.com. These are projects that are near and dear to him and very important. So whatonearthishappening.com, freeyourmindconference.com, and let's get this thing rolling. We if you weren't listening in the first hour, we kind of ended it with about how this media domination, this control, this mind control is prevalent everywhere, every day. Everything we're exposed to is a mind control tactic. So what is the Free Your Mind Conference all about, Mark?
The Free Your Mind Conference is about exposing people to the manipulation that they're subject to on a daily basis. It's about helping people to expand their perceptions of reality, of what's really going on around them, and to really get out of the mindset of being able to be manipulated by ultimately getting out of fear, getting out of the consciousness, the vibratory energy of fear. Really, it's unconsciousness. To the extent that one is in any level of fear is the extent that they are actually unconscious. That is not to say to ignore what's going on around you that may be negative or have a negative possibility from manifesting. That you don't need to react to that with fear. Taking in knowledge about what might happen is not negative or bad. that's dealing with the reality that is all around you. And that's really what the Free Your Mind Conference is about. It's about awareness so you can make informed decisions and not decisions that are completely reactionary and based in fear, in which case you're going to be going right along with the program of what the dominators, who ultimately are manipulating the reality and people's sense of reality, where they want you to go, instead of actually making your own truly informed decisions. So the Free Your Mind Conference, I guess you could say, is a gathering of whistleblowers who are actually telling people about the manipulating of this world through people's the manipulated sense of reality that people are buying into, and helping people to actually transcend that condition so that they can truly experience freedom and truly live in a way that is in harmony with true freedom and with the laws of nature.
Mm-hmm. And when's this taking place? When's this conference?
Okay, so the Free Your Mind 2 conference, this is the second conference of its kind. We've decided to hold them biannually instead of every year, because we want to make them really big, huge events and not, basically downplay them because they're happening every single year. So we'll see if things go well this year. We'll do another one in 2 years if we're all still here. But this is the second of the Free Your Mind conferences. The first one we had back in 2011. It was tremendously successful here in Philadelphia. We're expecting this one at least to be twice as big. So Free Your Mind 2 is coming up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, April 25th, 26th, and 27th. That's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in 2013. The tagline for the conference, as always, is it is a conference on consciousness, mind control, and the occult. Hidden knowledge is ultimately what this entire conference is all about, and exposing that hidden knowledge to people so that they can make informed decisions about what's taking place around them. So it's going to be taking place at the historic and beautiful Arch Street Meeting House, which was the meeting place of the Quakers, the Society of Friends in Philadelphia, and it's a beautiful facility. You can get images of it on the Free Your Mind Conference website if you go to the Venue and Lodging tab of the site. So the Arch Street Meeting House in the historic section of Philadelphia is going to be the location for the conference. And we have 22 speakers already lined up. And as a matter of fact, we have really begun finalizing the lineup. We're going to have 24 speakers. There's 2 slots that are yet to be filled, but we are right now speaking with the people that we believe are going to fill those last 2 slots. So it's going to be 24 speakers overall, probably 8 speakers each day for the event, or maybe we'll have 7 on the first day and 9 on one of the days, but 24 total speakers over a 3-day period. And here's who we have confirmed already. If you go to the main page or the speakers page, you can check out each of these individuals, and there are bios for them up on the site. You can click their photos and go to their bio page. Alan Steinfeld, Alfred Weber, Andrew Bashago, Ben Stewart, Bob Tuscan, Kathy O'Brien, Curtis Davis, Dr. Dream Mark Peebler, Frater X, Freeman Fly, Jan Irvin, Jay Parker, Jim Fetzer, Larkin Rose, Laura Eisenhower, Lennon Honor, Loren Moret, myself, Mark Passio, I'll be speaking at the event, Mark Phillips, Randall Carlson, Ross Ben, and Sonia Barrett. And again, we'll be adding 2 more names as soon as they're definitively confirmed to the schedule, but that's who's confirmed so far. Tickets are very, very reasonably priced. The entire event for all 3 days, plus a speaker meet and greet with a meal. And we're going to announce soon, if we can get it confirmed, we're working on the possibility of even having a conference on the a concert on the first night of the conference at the end of the speaker meet and greet. That's not confirmed yet, but we're working on it. For the entire 3 days with the meet and greet, with a meal and a concert, it's only $120 for all 3 days. That's extremely reasonably priced when it comes to other conferences of this size and stature with a lineup like this. And if you understand what goes into bringing this all together, and the transportation and lodging costs and the promotional costs, running a website, printing. We printed 5,000 full color 5x7 postcards. We're probably going to print another 5,000 before it's all said and done and get those distributed throughout the entire Philadelphia region. When you understand the massive costs that go into hosting an event like this, you realize that's a very, very, very cheap price for a 3-day event, and blows away any of the prices of events that are comparable to this over that kind of a time period with that many speakers. So we're really, really looking forward to it. We just recently confirmed Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips. That was a big announcement I made a couple weeks back. They were the authors of the book Transformation of America, and are going to talk about satanic ritual abuse at the highest levels of government. Because, again, this is a cult. That's what people really need to understand. An ancient religion is what is driving this entire system of control. If you haven't figured that out yet, you're very, 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 very far behind the cutting edge of research when it comes to this global control system. You have to understand that an ancient religion is driving this entire thing, and you need to know what their belief systems are about. We talked about that the last time, the entire show that you had me on the show. I went into their tenets and their ideology and what they believe and why they're doing what they're doing, because it's driven by their belief systems. But this conference is ultimately about exposing that cult and exposing how the methodologies by which they keep us under control.
And Mark, I want to get into that on the backside of this. And it sounds absolutely wonderful. I want to know how many people showed up at the last one.
Sure.
But let's, and then I want to get into some of this control and how these satanic rituals dominate governance. We're going to be back with Mark Passio, more Wide Awake News Radio. Just a few minutes, guys. Hang tight. How many were at the last conference?
We had over 200 people at the first Free Your Mind conference, so we are hoping to quadruple that if we can. The venue holds over 800 people. I would at least love to see 500 people in the building this time. I mean, if we don't pull 500, I think I'd be minorly disappointed with the kind of promotion that we're doing this time around. To bring in about 200 the first time, there's no reason we shouldn't at least double or triple that this time around.
Well, I'm hoping, since it's been 2 years and there has been a slow but steady pace of people waking up, that more and more people are realizing that that this is truly going on, and and draw more attention or draw more. Spend more energy and time looking out for venues like this and looking for like-minded people. I think that is critical. I wish you had one out here on the West, or at least a little more centrally located, right. So maybe you could draw some more people from the West.
Sure. It's a new endeavor to do something kind of on this kind of a scale on the East Coast. You have things like Conspiracy Con, and you have Awake and Aware and other conferences that happen out largely on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But we're trying to create something new here and gather some support for it here on the East Coast. But I would not be opposed to having some sort of a branch of it if someone wanted to put it together out in the central U.S. or out on the West Coast as well. Yeah. It's something I would consider in the future.
Well, I'm trying to think what April 25th through the 27th. I'd love to be there. I'd love to come out there. I mean, it's obviously 2,000 miles away from me, but
right.
We
had people come from all over the country last time, and hopefully that will stay the same this time. People flying in and lodging in the city. There's a hotel directly across the street from the venue. in the historic district of Philadelphia, and that's what we're basically recommending for people. So you could literally walk outside the front door of the hotel, walk directly across the street, and be at the conference immediately.
Nice, very nice. Well, when we go back on, I definitely want to talk about some of the things, touch on some of these topics. Well, you know what I need to do is get your history. I should have done that at the top of the first hour. Because people might be wondering at this point, what gives Mark Passio this insight? What gives him the insight to this control apparatus and to these satanic rituals and how it dominates a government. So when we come back, I might have you touch on your history again real quick.
Sure.
I do have a question that Gary wrote down in there. In the chat in our Skype, Mark, that Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host. Mark Passio is our guest for hour number 2, as well as he was for hour number 1. Buddy had a question in the chat, and Gary was kind enough to put it into the text here in Skype, so to make sure to ask it. And Buddy, I'm going to ask that question, but before I do, I'm going to ask Mark something I should ask him at the top of the first hour, certainly at the top of this second hour, since we're going to be talking about the Free Your Mind conference and the need to truly free our minds. Mark, give us a little bit of your history that makes you an expert in these topics that we're talking about.
Sure. I mean, I would generally resist the term expert. I'm a person who's researching things like anybody else, but I do have some direct experience in the dark occult. I was involved in dark occultism in my past as a member of the Church of Satan and a priest within that organization that was run by Anton LaVey. And I had a lot of connections to other satanic organizations like the Temple of Set and the Order of the Evil Eye and the Whitehall Church of Satan and other groups in this area. And that involvement in my past helped me to really deeply understand the dark occultist mindset. It helped me to understand the ideology that was ultimately driving this world and controlling it, keeping it under control. And we, again, the last time on the show, I went more extensively into my background in the dark occult, and we talked about the ideological tenets of this type of a religion. And it is indeed a religion, regardless of what may or may not be claimed by its adherents, and they'll call it a philosophy or an ideology. It is ultimately a religion by the major definition of religion. Religion comes from the Latin religare, which means to hold back or to thwart from forward progress. This ideology that is basically adopted by the so-called quote-unquote global elite is what's holding back the progress of humanity. It is what is keeping us from forward progress in consciousness. And they give it in smaller dosages, in a watered-down form to the public for them to latch onto. And we talked about that last time as well, how the major ideological tenets of Satanism and dark Luciferianism are, in fact, the major beliefs of the majority of the people, albeit at a lower level. Okay, they're not giving them the high-level information. They're keeping them in the dark and keeping them in ignorance, but trying to get them to be kind of like a junior version, a mini-me, so to speak, of the...
Over greater society? Over greater society, do you mean?
Throughout society. That's right.
Is that why
to satanic culture, to satanic ideology, and that's what makes us capable of being controlled by this larger a cult that is basically a secret society network that exists throughout the strata of our institutions and our society as a whole.
And how, the obvious question is, with your experience and what you know and your involvement in the Church of Satan, and how you've seen the manipulation, and you can look around society and see the degradation of society. Right. I mean, my obvious question is, at any point in your past experience, were you ever enlightened to the fact that people need to be led to this position of degradation. They just generally do not want to, as human nature, right, as beings, want to be this selfish, this greedy, this violent, this uncaring to one another. They have to be led to these places.
Absolutely the belief system, the ideology of the dark occultists. They want people to accept that, because if you don't accept that, okay, if you believe that that's not human nature, that human nature is something completely different than the current condition. See, people always confuse human nature and the human condition. The current conditions that we are experiencing as humanity are programmed conditions that is masking the true nature of humanity, that has absolutely nothing to do with the darkness and negativity that people in their ignorance ascribe to quote unquote human nature. They want people to believe that human nature is inherently evil. They want people to believe that people are inherently bad, because if that's the worldview that you carry, you yourself are more easily able to be manipulated, and will more easily go along with their agenda and their program, because you'll say, well, it has to be this way because look at how bad people are by their nature. It has nothing to do with nature. It has everything to do with conditioning. Because that's what has led to the current condition. It's right there in the word, folks. I talk about the power of words all the time. They don't call it the human nature. They call it the human condition. Okay? And it's there because we are conditioned into this perception of reality and this perception of who we are. Until that changes at the mental level, at the psycho-spiritual level, do not expect the external conditions to change. That's not how it works. It doesn't work like that. The external reality can only be changed when there is a perceptual or a paradigm shift within the mind, within the human psyche. Once you change it from that causal level of reality, then the manifested level can then experience change as well. But until you change it at the fundamental causal level, which is mind, do not expect the physical reality to change one iota.
And it takes time, doesn't it? Doesn't it take time to shift a society to bring the human condition to the state that we currently see now? I mean, but we've seen it throughout history, haven't we? Haven't we seen? You know what? I think we have. Yeah, we do. I got the music here in my ears. We're going to take a break now. I want to continue this conversation on the backside of the break, guys. Hang tight. Mark Passio was our guest. We'll be back in just a few minutes. It fascinates me, Mark, because we can look at history and it's almost a matter of desensitization. You can desensitize somebody to anything. Put them in war, sure, right? And see, they can see gore, blood, guts, and all of a sudden this kind of thing doesn't become this doesn't shock you anymore. It isn't necessarily even bad anymore. Right. And we've seen it throughout history. Right, over and over again, different empires come and go, sure, and they become very brutal to their own people. And I mean, do we just have resets, or I mean, why?
People are so used to living their lives as a slave that they can't even imagine anymore. The imagination has been so devastated to the possibility that things could exist another way that there are many people who believe that just human beings can never be free. Once they have you there, forget it, you're done. I mean, that is spiritual death. If you believe something must be the way that it is now and can never be changed, that's exactly what the dominators want. That means that they're perpetually in control, and their bloodlines would perpetually be in control for eternity, for as long as the earth exists. And that's what they want people to believe, that change is impossible. If that's part of worldview. See, this is all, the control system is all hinged upon worldview. If your worldview is human nature is bad, things can never be changed, we are eternally a certain way, that is how we were programmed, and that is how we must remain forever. You are an eternal slave. And that is the dominator's master's wet dream. That is the dominator's wet dream. They want people to accept that change is impossible. And that's part of a poisoned worldview. This is why things aren't changing, is because that's still the majority of people's worldview. They're still agreeing with those false notions of reality. It's a skewed and false perception of how things really are. Of course things can be changed. Of course this isn't human nature. It is our current condition. Of course the true value of the individual is infinite, because it's not based in matter or money or, social status or anything like that. Until that worldview shift happens, the paradigm shift of a changed manifested reality is impossible. But when that worldview shift takes place within the human psyche, then the external conditions can ultimately change. The conditioning is hinged upon the poisoned worldview, and most people are still locked in that poisoned worldview.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But my question would be, we're going to come back out of break here in a minute. Maybe we'll get to this again. It's humanity seems to cycle. If we look throughout history, do you know what I'm talking about? We seem to or in your view, have we steadily marched to this level of complete slavery that we are in now, or have you? I mean, it seems if we look throughout history, we see rise of empire,
yes.
rise, and then with that,
then a collapse, and then they build up a new one. If they reset the matrix,
yes.
Let's reload the matrix. And again, it's because even in the extremely unpleasant conditions of suffering that people got led into through that mind control, they won't let go of the fundamental.
Yes, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath. Fascinating conversation during the last segment and into the break. And we're going to continue it. Now, we have a couple of questions here that we're scrolling by. And let me let me get to one of them right now, because if I don't, I won't. Buddy asked the first one. Charlie, please ask Mark if preparing and having a gut instinct to rebel isn't just as much a knee-jerk reaction as being fearful. I'd like to answer that, but go ahead, Mark. I'll give you the floor on that one.
Yeah, if it is a completely reactionary thing, then of course, it's not going to lead to anything good. But if it's based on a true understanding of natural law and a true understanding of our rights as free beings, as sovereign beings, then I would say actually physically fighting back against the dominator is not necessarily falling into the trap. I'm not a pacifist. People say, oh, we always have to remain peaceful. Well, I think that's conditioning. I think that's problematic. I am peaceful as long as no one is attacking me or trying to usurp my rights. But that doesn't mean if someone is attacking me or usurping my rights, I'm going to sit there in a meditative posture and just say, oh, this isn't real. It's just a part of a holographic reality that I'm decoding. While I may understand that, the experience is real. Yeah. The experience is real, and allowing something that is not within harmony of natural law to just go by unchecked and unabated is equally as immoral as the people who are trying to foist it onto us. So while I am completely and 100% peaceful, I do not consider myself in any way a pacifist and would not lay down to a dominator. I think that's the problem. And that's what societies throughout history have done, because they were too cowardly to step up and use their natural law right to put down the attempted willful domination of people who had absolutely zero right to do what they were doing to that society, and they just sat back and watched it happen like watching a movie on a television screen. That is actually as morally culpable as the dominator who's doing the immoral act, and quite possibly even more morally culpable. Even more morally culpable. So I would ask people to consider that. I ask people all the time, the people who fought back against the British in the American Revolution, Okay, was that a mind control situation going on the part of the British, mind controlling their troops to come across an ocean in wooden ships? How mind controlled do you have to be to go and oppress people at the behest of a psychopath who calls himself a king? To go across an ocean, to set your family aside and get on a wooden ship and go across an ocean to oppress people that you possibly never even met a day in your life. You have to be under deep extremity of mind control in order to do something like that, which all soldiers throughout history are under mind control. The entire way of training them and putting them through their paces in basic training, because you're training an animal that has no actual ability to think critically. They've always been under mind control. It's a mind control technique in creating a, quote, soldier, a soul dyer, one who is deadened in a spiritual capacity and is willing to follow orders. I ask people, did the American colonists who fought back against the British, was that within their right? Was that an act of love to preserve freedom in this land and to preserve the possibility for freedom for future generations? I'll tell you what it was. It was an act of love. Picking up that weapon and doing what they had to do to the mind-controlled hordes that came over here to try to oppress the people of this land was an act of love. It was not an act of violence. It was acts which are within human rights to do when a people are being oppressed and their rights are being usurped. And that's what needs to be understood much more clearly by people, of what a right is, what a right is not, what we do have a right to do, what we do not have a right to do. And people need to also, in understanding those dynamics of natural law, need to understand the difference between violence, which is the initiation of force that one had no right to take, and force, which one does have a right to take to prevent themselves from experiencing the repercussions of violence. When somebody is acting in a violent mode, that means they started it. More mind control is about, it doesn't matter who started it. All it matters is the kind of action, and that's nonsense. It entirely matters who started it. As a matter of fact, that's the only thing that does matter, is who starts a forceful altercation. The one who initiates the use of force, okay, in coercing the will of another, has initiated violence. That's what violence is. It's the initiation of force that you had no right to initiate. And does someone have a right to respond forcefully to that? Absolutely, they have a right. It doesn't mean they have to do it, but the right there exists to do it. And I would say at some point, if you did not physically defend yourself, you are complicit with the wrongdoing. So for the people of Nazi Germany or Stalinist Russia, okay, to sit back and do nothing in the face of the kind of violent oppression that they were undertaking, is that equally as wrong? You better believe it's equally as wrong as the people committing that violence. But the point is, once you're at that, it's often already too late, because you didn't deal with the problem in consciousness. So then, unfortunately, conditions are going to be rearranged in the physical domain that you're going to have to get it done with force. That's what I'm trying to prevent by explaining to people what they're creating through their unconsciousness. They're creating that situation because they don't understand rights. They don't understand all it comes down to. People do not understand what a right is and what a right is not. They believe they have rights they don't, and they believe they don't have rights that they do. They don't know the difference between right and wrong.
I agree with with everything you just said there. That was a brilliant explanation. And I just want to add to Buddy's question, which was, is preparing, and having a gut instinct to rebel as much a knee-jerk reaction to being fearful. I agree that it absolutely is not. I think having that gut instinct is your real human nature.
I totally agree. Yes, I would ask people to think about this. If you are aware of the potential for a hot police state to manifest itself, would it not be in your better interest to be aware of that and possibly make the preparations that would need to be made in that eventuality? But see, the whole point is, I would say you don't want to make that your main focus. That would be something you would want to do ancillarily in the back of your mind, almost in a state where, okay, I know this needs to be done, just like I know I need to wash my dishes before I eat on them again. Okay, or I need to, brush my teeth, or I need to bathe my body. It's something that you simply know that is needed, and it may, and this is something that may be needed in the future. I would say make the consciousness aspect of this the main priority, and where you're putting the bulk of your energy. To just be in that survivalist mindset and that prepper's mindset all the time is preparing for losing. Yeah. That's actually expecting to lose, and for not to not be able to make a shift in consciousness occur. I would say use some spare energy toward that goal, and put the main bulk of your energy into helping people to understand reality and change their consciousness so that that manifestation never occurs. I ask people all
that's
the time,
prepping in a way itself. That is prepping in a way itself.
The best way to prepare. I ask people, what is the best way to avert any, to survive any given catastrophic situation? And especially, what's the best way to survive any man-made catastrophe? The answer is to do what is required to avert the catastrophe to begin with. To not do that thing, so then you don't have to experience the painful results that lead to enormous suffering.
All right, we're gonna take our final break of the second hour here. We have Scott from Wisconsin who's holding. We're gonna go to you right after this break. And I have a few more questions that came in chat. We'll do our best to cover all this. We're going to be right back with Mark Passio in just a few minutes, guys. Hang tight. I believe that Chris and the folks over at seedsnow.com offer the best. Here's let's see.
Yeah, sure. Any questions anyone wants to fire,
Well, I'm gonna give you one now.
Sure.
Because at least we'll answer it on. I'm assuming we're still broadcasting on Justin TV, so I'll give you this one now. And if we don't have enough time with the caller, then at least we've covered it on this. If we do, we can cover it on the program as well. This was a question. What's Mark's take on new holographic universe theories, or some of the thoughts from Nassim Harriman?
Okay. I have known for quite some time we're living in a quantum hologram. I mean, if people are latched onto 5 sense reality, they're owned. And that's part of the worldview shift. We are not physical beings. We are spiritual beings having an experience in a holographic construct that we call 5 sense reality. And that's part of the dominator's control over our perceptions. They want us locked in ego identification, which is ultimately identification with the 5 senses and the body. If that's where you're at, ultimately you're in a state of fear, because you would ultimately fear physical death as some sort of a cessation of consciousness, which it is obviously not. And I mean, I've known this in a very extraordinarily deep way, as of my experiences with certain entheogenic substances, which I believe peel back the veils of the 5 sense identification to a point where you can see the underlying construct that is pure consciousness. And the one that helped me to get over that existential angst, which is what I call it, this idea that the possibility that death is the cessation of consciousness altogether. The substance that I shouldn't even use the term substance. I look at it as a form of consciousness in its own right. That helped me to alleviate that existential doubt was dimethyltryptamine, and my experiences with that entheogenic substance, or consciousness, if you will. That helped me really to see that this is indeed a holographic construct. And for anyone who is deeply immersed themselves in that experience at a particular time, no explanation will be required. They will know what I mean by that. for people who have never breached that realm or touched upon it through a entheogen or a psychedelic or perhaps a deep meditative experience, then I would say they may not understand what I'm saying, because it's very difficult to put that experience of pure consciousness into words. But as far as, is this a holographic reality? It absolutely is, and I'm very familiar with it.
Guys, welcome back. Final segment, Wide Awake News Radio. We answered one of the questions in chat during the break. If you're listening on Justin TV, you heard Mark's answers to that. If you're not, go to the YouTube broadcast. It will be by tomorrow morning, late tonight, and it'll be broadcast there as well. And if we can get to it in the time remaining, then we will. But we're going to go right now. Callers get precedent. They hold online, so they get precedent. Scott from Wisconsin, thanks very much for holding. What is on your mind? What's your question for Mark?
Hey there, Charlie and Mark. You know, I love Mark listening to you guys tonight, and the biggest word I can say is preparation. You know, how many people with that Frankenstorm that hit the East Coast had 4 weeks that they saw that beast crawling up the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And you hear, I just seen the death toll was at 72 people killed. You had these people being macho men saying they hung in there and that when they know that was the grace of the Lord why they made it through it. But you're talking a catastrophic storm that hit, that we're talking power that could possibly be out for 3 weeks to 4.
Mm-hmm.
It burn your food, your water. How are you going to sanitize your body? And Mark has a great point, and it reminds me of, he brought up Stalin, and how about Hitler? You know, dumb the people down, give them what they want, but when it comes to making clear decisions on how to survive, this is a really scary thing, because a lot of people that we need to do, Charlie, is number one, get off the boob tube, okay? Free your mind, number one. Get out of the newspapers, because a lot of them are corrupt. And they got to get into you, brother, and Christopher Green. I don't know, God bless him. The soldiers that stand up, that are awake, and I'm not talking about sleeping at night in the bed, but listening to you guys, reaching out like me to get on here with that stir fire in that soul. And there's one thing, Charlie, and Mark said that, it's one thing to go out and look for trouble, okay? Right. But it's another thing to be ready. And
I agree with you.
Got your family, and Mark has his family, and you got your kids, and you're in your house, and you see Satan at your door, are you going to invite him in and say, hey, dude, what's going on? Or are you going to lay the lead because he's there to hurt you? So
yeah, I agree. I think, Scott, I think you're right on the money. Scott, I think you're right on the money that it's paramount that we listen as Buddy's question. We have this gut instinct to be prepared, and that goes back to what we talked about over the last hour and a half, which is you have to step outside of the information propaganda machine and realize that Think of this storm as you described it. It was a big storm, but it wasn't what it was sold to us as. And now there's millions of people who believe the government saved them because we only have 52 people dead.
Exactly. Right? It's perception management. That's what it is. And I believe this was all done as a test to see how deeply they still have the hooks in the public mind. And I think it showed them that they still have the hooks very deeply embedded, and there's only a small percentage of people who are out of that perception management. And again, the caller makes a good point. You need to know your situation and prepare accordingly, not to give in to fear, but to know what the potentials are so that you can make an informed decision. And, had a hurricane of category 3 or 4 or even 5 strength been coming up the East Coast, then I would say, some of these concerns would have been very much warranted and justified. But again, they were hyping it up beyond all possible manifestations of a storm of category 1 status, just so that they could manage the other side and say, see, we gave you all this warning and you need us. What would you have done without that? And many people buy into that. They actually think, this is all simply about technology. Okay. If we have the technology to see weather patterns and that you can get that out there to people, you need no spin on it. If the public is informed, if we're have the ability to think critically, you can say, here's what this satellite map is looking at. These are the wind speeds that are measured here, here, and here. And now you have the information that you can base your next action on. And that's all that's required. You don't need somebody going out and standing in, some sideways rain, making it as dramatic as possible and getting
and
people to believe that.
Behind.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's utterly ridiculous. And again, it's sold to people in a childish way to make you think, to make people perceive we are the children who can't take care of ourselves, and the government is mommy and daddy who has our best interest in mind, and it's all perception management.
Let's be really clear. 60 million people on the eastern seaboard. If this would have been a 1,500-mile diameter Category 5 hurricane, there isn't enough shelters set up. There isn't enough.
There's nothing you can do except start heading west.
That's right.
That's about the answer when you have something like that. I always go back and think and ask people, can you please explain to me the rationale of people who think that they should build 100% permanent structures on the ocean coast, right on the coast of an ocean, when an earthquake could be triggered, a tsunami could hit. First of all, this is the idea of permanence being embedded into the brain that people have a hard time getting over and becoming detached from. We have to have our permanent thing here. It's got to be here, and it's got to be permanent. Nothing could ever change it or wipe it out. This is the idea of attachment to permanence, and the idea of release of attachment to permanence is a very Eastern and Buddhist concept to help people to understand change is inevitable. There is always going to come a time when there is the possibility of a chaotic outcome. And again, they're hyping that and trying to get people into fear over it, instead of getting people to accept that is simply the nature of life. Life is change. Get over it. Okay? It doesn't, and I'm not trying to downplay again any of the people who have experienced loss, devastation or suffering as a result of an event like this. Their experience is very real, and I wish them the very best in recovery from whatever circumstance they may be experiencing. I'm not trying to downplay their pain and suffering. What I'm saying is the idea here is to keep people in this level of ego attachment and in a consciousness of permanence, of attachment to permanence, which if you're there, that is fear. That is fear, because ultimately we talked about the fear of chaos, the possibility for chaos, keeping people in a state where they can be manipulated and ultimately controlled. Well, what is the ultimate form of chaos that people inevitably are still trapped in the fear of? If you take chaos to its ultimate outcome and manifestation, what can it possibly result in? Death. So therefore, until people can get over the fear of death, they can never truly be free. I think it's an excellent point that was made in the allegorical film V for Vendetta, when V takes the female star of the movie and puts her through this horrific experience to toughen her up, and explains to her when she comes out on the other side saying, I will not cooperate with your agenda regardless of whether I die or not. And he says to her finally, now you're free. Because you're no longer afraid to die. You're no longer afraid of death. A worldview shift has taken place within a person's mind in that state. of fearlessness.
And that person now, wait a minute, Mark. Look, that kind of dedication, that kind of realization, that kind of awareness, that kind of lack of fear, that you are ready to disconnect from the fear of death.
Right.
That has been turned into what? That has been turned into radicalism.
Exactly. Extremism. That's extremism. Right.
And you're an enemy of the state if you have that mindset.
Wasn't that what every great teacher was trying to explain to us throughout all human history? That death is not something to be feared because we are not simply physical beings in a 5-sense reality. We are eternal consciousness that is of spiritual nature, having an experience in this domain that we consider physical and that appears physical. And the caller during the break, the chatter during the break who asked the question, what do you think of the holographic universe theory? Of course we're living in a quantum holographic universe. Science is finally catching up to this, proving it experimentally. That there is no solidity to matter. They have penetrated past the Planck distance and recognized that there is nothing there except vibratory energy and nothing else. There is no solidity. This has been experimentally proven now. And the public is just completely ignorant of these findings, because that level of science often takes 15 and maybe even 20 years to get into the public consciousness at any kind of a deep level, that kind of cutting edge science. Right. But people are still latched on to this is a 5-sense reality and it's so solid and real. I'm not saying dismiss the experience. The experience is real. It's there to learn from. But if you get latched into 5 sense is all there is reality, that puts you in the mindset of fear. And from that mindset, you can be controlled. And part of that is continuously keeping people in a fear of chaos and a fear of death. Until you can detach from those primal fears, you're going to be able to be manipulated by the cult that is running this world at the current time. And nothing externally is going to change for the better. Don't expect the conditions to change if you're still in that level of fear of death. You can never ultimately change that because ultimately, what are they playing off of? They're playing off of the perception management, the distortion of your perception of the real, of what is actually there, of what is actually real, and getting you to identify with that 5-sense version of reality that, oh, I am just little me. My body is who and what I am. If you're thinking that, you're going to be in fear. You're going to be able to be put into fear and ultimately to be controlled, to be manipulated and to be controlled. If you recognize you are eternal consciousness, you are essentially a one holographic aspect of the all, the totality of creation. That becomes your worldview. That existential fear of that you're just here for a short time and then gone will be gone. It will leave you. You will have conquered.
It's all about it's all about the fear. Fear equals control, and we have to break through. Mark Passio, I'm real sorry. We're completely out of time. We're about to be cut off by the studio. Thank you very much, guys. I'm going to drop the websites into the chat room. WhatOnEarthIsHappening.com, FreeYourMindConference.com as well. Guys, please go check them out. Support these guys. Get there if you can. Mark Passio.
Thanks so much for having me, Charlie.
You bet. Thank you very much. Welcome anytime. Guys, stay tuned for Jeff Rintz. He is coming up next. Tomorrow night, we have Eric Lovely, Gabe Elton. Have a good night. Peace.